Back to the channel. Get comfortable, turn down the lights, and let the world outside fade away. Tonight, we are traveling deep into the Pacific Northwest to a small, isolated cabin surrounded by miles of towering pine trees. It was late October when Elena decided to rent the cabin. She was a writer, seeking total silence. No internet, no phone service, just the wind in the trees and the keys of her vintage typewriter. The first 2 days were perfect. The air smelled of damp earth, pine needles, and wood smoke. But on the third night, the fog rolled in. It was so thick, it swallowed the trees entirely. Standing at the window, it felt like the cabin was floating in an empty, gray void. At exactly 11:11 p.m., Elena heard it. A faint, rhythmic sound from the porch outside. It sounded like someone stepping heavily onto the old floorboards, walking, one slow step at a time, across the front porch. She froze. She held her breath, listening. The footsteps stopped right outside the heavy wooden front door. Knock, knock, knock. It wasn't an aggressive knock. It was slow, deliberate, polite. Elena did not move. Who could be out here? The nearest neighbor was a 5-mile hike through dense forest. She crept toward the door, her bare feet making no sound on the rug. She looked through the tiny glass peephole, but there was nothing, just the swirling gray fog reflecting the porch light. No silhouette, no shadow. The handle turned just a fraction of an inch, then stopped, locked. Elena backed away into the kitchen. She grabbed a flashlight, aiming it at the back window that looked out into the deep woods. She clicked it on. The beam of light cut through the fog, and there, standing just at the edge of the tree line, she saw it. A tall, dark figure. It was completely motionless, arms hanging flat at its sides. It didn't wear a coat, despite the freezing rain. It just stood there, staring directly back at the cabin, staring at her. Elena turned off the flashlight. Her heart was racing, but she tried to tell herself it was just a stray hiker, a hunter lost in the storm. She went upstairs to the bedroom, locking the bedroom door behind her. She crawled under the heavy blankets, pulling them up to her chin. The house grew incredibly cold. Her breath began to form small puffs of mist in the room. And then, the sound changed. The sound of the wind seemed to warp, turning into words. Let us in. It's cold out here. Let us in. It wasn't coming from outside anymore. It was coming from inside the walls. A soft, dry scratching, traveling up the wooden beams of the cabin, moving from the kitchen below, straight up into the ceiling above her bed. She looked up at the ceiling. The old pine boards were old and stained. And there, in the dust, she saw something new. Small, damp drops of water were dripping down from the ceiling, pooling onto the floorboards. But the roof wasn't leaking rainwater. The liquid was thick and smelled faintly of old, stagnant river water. The rain stopped. The whispering stopped. The silence was heavier than the sound. Elena lay perfectly still for what felt like hours. Her eyes were fixed on the bedroom door. Suddenly, she remembered. The small, sliding window in the downstairs bathroom. The latch was broken. She had forgotten to jam it shut with the wooden block the owner left behind. Thump. Something heavy and wet had just stepped into the downstairs bathroom. Elena closed her eyes tight. She heard the slow, wet footsteps walking across the kitchen hardwood, moving toward the stairs. 1 step. 2 steps. They were coming up. She pulled the blanket completely over her face, breathing softly, praying for the sun to rise. The footsteps stopped directly outside her bedroom door. She waited for the door to break. She waited for the lock to snap. But instead, a soft voice whispered from the other side of the wood, right where her head was resting against the wall. "Thank you for staying with me. Sleep well, my friends. Sleep well."